Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, the personal channel for A.W. Finnegan. In today's video, I will break down how Lyme disease is not thousands of years old, as some of these fact checkers and some dishonest scientists say. And it was kind of in response. I have been meaning to put this out for a while, but it was in response to this one article that I found, and it was called, where is it? Fact checked. Fact check. Lyme disease was not invented in a lab in 1975. Its bacteria is thousands of years old. By Marlo Lee, writing for Lead Stories, which is a site that is stamped with approval by Meta or Facebook, and it's also approved by the International Fact-Checking Network, IFCN. And the article was about Lyme disease originating from the Plum Island laboratory in 1975 due to Erich Traub's work there. And I say that what I agree with in this article is that no, it wasn't invented in a lab in 1975. It was weaponized in Germany starting in 1939 by Erich Traub, and it went through several developments, and then when he came over to the US the second time, he weaponized it further. Whether it was at Plum Island or in Columbia and coming back and forth, or in Maryland, I don't know, but he was doing tests at Plum Island and he was working there, and we will go over that. And when I say weaponized, so he took a strain of Borrelia that was from birds. It is called Borrelia anserina. Back in his day, it was called Spirocheta gallinarum, and that had been around for perhaps millions or even billions of years, who knows. But he took something that was already existing in nature, and then he weaponized it using viruses. It was an adaptation method and animal passages, and he adapted it to many new animals and humans, and that's what we mean by weaponized. He did not invent it from scratch. So let's get that out of the way. Secondly, 1975 is not the start of Lyme disease, or even 1968. It was spreading since the early 50s, although they decided to shine light on it in 1975 and admit that it was a disease because of a cluster of cases. And it was just something that, because you have this thing called HLA and it affects people a certain way. So just as there are variants of different viruses, there are variants of the immune system, and like different or even people within the same race can have different HLAs. Like, it might have to do more with like a geographical area where they were at for a long time, but I'm not going to really get too deeply into that in this article, in this video. That's all I'm going to say about it. Now, this woman cites an article from 2004, and it was an article by the New York Times called Heaping More Dirt on Plum Island, and it was about Michael Christopher Carroll's book Lab 257, and an ARS spokeswoman. ARS is the Agricultural Research Service. It's a subdivision of the USDA. she said that there's no association that she knows that Erich Traub had to Plum Island, and that is completely wrong. And I would bet to say that she knew that, but she was lying out of damage control. They've been trying to cover this thing up ever since it happened. And my book, The Sleeper Agent, explains why that is. And it tells you the story for the very first time. So continuing on. So Erich Traub was employed at Plum Island. I have the documents to prove that. And when they brought Public Law 496, 80th Congress, into a congressional hearing, they made a reference to Traub, and they were planning on putting him there since the very beginning, even when this law was getting rolling. And that public law was about finding a foot and mouth disease lab to put somewhere in the United States, and they settled on Plum Island. The FBI documents that I have confirm that he was employed as a chief scientist at Plum Island. Okay, and it says, he writes chief scientist. I'm going to put the documents on the screen. Chief scientist and the ARS, and it says, he cites Public Law 496, 80th Congress as the reason for being there, and then he puts the station that he worked at, Greenport, Long Island, which is another name for Plum Island. It's the Greenport, Long Island station. That's Plum Island, and I will show that. So here we go. That's proven. Erich Traub was at Plum Island, and that shows it. Next, the idea that Lyme disease is thousands of years old. She says, scientists in Italy found a 5,300-year-old mummy who had the oldest known case of Lyme disease according to genetic tests performed after its discovery. This is wrong. They did not find Borrelia burgdorferi, nor Borrelia afzelii or Borrelia guerini, the three species of Borrelia responsible for Lyme disease. They found merely traces of what they thought might be Borrelia, but they didn't. So they say, while several reads were specific for Borrelia, the 60% coverage still represents an upper boundary, as reads may map to other species besides Borrelia. That's what it says, and so it proves that no, they didn't find Borrelia burgdorferi. And I'm going to show you even further why the methodologies that they used were completely unreliable for Borrelia burgdorferi. So the technology that they used is called next generation sequencing technology for whole genome sequencing. And there's a paper that points out that this is completely inadequate for Borrelia burgdorferi specifically. So they say, however, the power of next-generation sequencing has not yet been fully harnessed for vector-borne and zoonotic disease systems, the majority of globally emerging infectious diseases. This is due to the high ratio of host, the arthropod vector or the reservoir host, to pathogen DNA present in mixed DNA samples. The overwhelming presence of this exogenous DNA, which may include commensal bacteria, endosymbionts, and environmental microbes, renders shotgun sequencing inefficient and cost prohibitive. And it says The agent of the most prevalent vector-borne disease in the U.S., the Lyme disease bacterium, Borrelia burgdorferi sensu stricto, exemplifies this common hurdle to genomic study for many vector-borne zoonotic systems. Shotgun approaches for whole genome sequencing of pathogens directly from field samples are inefficient due to the excess of contaminating host DNA present in the samples, which result in very low sequence coverage of the low copy number bacterial genomes present. So there you have it. It's completely inefficient. So no, they didn't prove that Lyme disease was found in a mummy 5,300 years ago, because they used methodologies that were completely inadequate. So there's that. Next, the fact checker says, researchers at Yale School of Medicine found that Borrelia burgdorferi, the bacterium that causes Lyme disease, existed for at least 60,000 years in the northeast region of the United States. Here's another instance of somebody reporting completely theoretical guesswork as though it is absolute fact. The Yale researchers made this conclusion off totally unsubstantiated theories or guesses, based on 146 ticks collected from the range of 1984 to 2013. And basically all they do is they look at the mutation rates and phylogeography. Phylogeography is something that is completely made of theories and guesswork. I will tell you the definition here. Phylogeography is the study of the historical processes that may be responsible for the past to present geographic distributions of genealogical lineages. This is accomplished by considering the geographic distribution of individuals in light of genetics, particularly population genetics. And here's here's where it says that this is complete guesswork. Past events that can be inferred include population expansion, population bottlenecks, vicariance, dispersal, and migration. Recently developed approaches integrating coalescent theory, or the genealogical history of alleles, and distributional information can more accurately address the relative roles of these different historical forces in shaping current patterns. And let me read the definition of infer. To infer something. Form an opinion or guess that something is true because of the information that you have. And I would say, I would compare it to how the anthropologist thought the human race was, a certain, was this many years old, right? And it was complete guesswork based on the information that they had. And then they started to realize over the years they're finding, like bones and mummies and stuff that were way older than they thought the human race was. And they're realizing, our guesswork was completely wrong. That's the same thing here. It's like complete guesswork. And these Yale researchers also further point out that the samples that they drew from were also completely inadequate, basically. It says, one limitation to this study is that phylogenies are inferred, guessed at, from consensus bacterial sequences from each individual tick sample. However, the consensus sequence may alternatively represent a chimeric sequence, a combination of segments of the multiple co-infecting haplotypes. With short-read sequence data used here, we are unable to reconstruct multiple bacterial haplotypes within a single sample. Longer read sequencing will enable sequencing multiple bacterial genomes from individual tick vectors in the future. They basically point out that their methodologies for, okay, so they're saying that there could be several different species, several different strands of this bacteria in one tick, and they're not able to sort out what's what. They're guessing. Alright? And now keep in mind, this guess for each sample of those 146 ticks, which is all guesswork, they're guessing, they're making inferences about the mutation rates with each individual sample, but they're not able to say what specifically that is, because there could be multiple. And then you have also the problem that I explained before with the next generation sequencing, and it's so they're guessing at what's in each sample of those 146 tick samples to make yet another guess based on phylogeography. It's a whole lot of guesswork, absolutely nothing substantial. And that is anything. I would say it's completely inadequate. And they basically say that. They basically say here's where they say it's completely inadequate. With short read sequence data used here, we are unable to reconstruct multiple bacterial haplotypes within a single sample. We are unable to do it. It's completely inadequate. Now, while I was reading this, I also saw that they cited one of David Persing's and Sam Telford's article about trying to say that Lyme disease was present in 2 mouse tissue samples from 1896 and from Cape Cod or something like that. And that paper was refuted by Richard Marconi and his colleagues from the NIH Rocky Mountains Laboratory after pointing out that the set of primers they used for testing were not reliable. And also, in that study, all they did was find a tiny fraction of the overall ospe plasmid, which contained material shared with viruses of the poxvirus family, and it's also extracellular DNA, which changes all the time and assimilates DNA from foreign sources. And they point that out. David Persing points that out in another paper, explaining that they can find plasmid DNA which contains telomeres that are homologous or the same to those of vaccinia virus in human tissues independent of Borrelia burgdorferi infection. So they can find it in there even if they don't have an infection with Borrelia burgdorferi. So that means that they're 1896, and they found it in 2 samples. And then they also point out that they are acutely aware of the problem of contaminating false positives in PCR testing. So that's completely inadequate. And then they published another paper, which I explained in my book. They published another paper that only backs up my story. So they got nothing. And they published that article. No, Lyme disease was not a biological weapon, despite what conspiracy theorists say. And that's why I named this article. No, Lyme disease is not thousands of years old, despite what fact checkers and some dishonest scientists say. And so I have shown completely that fact checker article, she was repeating things that were completely inadequate and were not facts as facts. But these fact checkers, they don't actually know really anything about what they're writing about. They just find what the authorities say about it and repeat that. That's all they do. And of course, this article has shown I hope this points out for the reader just how the authority talking points cannot be trusted regarding this matter, and for pretty much any other. One always has to investigate for oneself. They have been actively trying to cover up these misdeeds for decades, and they were using the scientific community to do it, just as they did with the Lyme disease diagnostic testing, which I have shown in my last article about Truth Cures, the Truth Cures organization. They have shown that they were using fraud. So I rest my case here. These fact checkers and these dishonest scientists have nothing. So with that said, everybody take care of yourself, be yourself, build yourself, and I will see you on the other side.
From all that was before, we shut another door, but not a last goodbye. Fate is taken once again, a fight we'll never win, and time again we try. Left alone, I can't wait too long. Fate. Love, we love so many times and in so many lives. Sometimes we got it right. It found its way back in until we meet again into that good night. No.